Welcome to week 7. We're now halfway finished our semester. Thank you so much for all of your hard work so far during this very difficult and strange semester. Today we're going to continue Unit 3. We'll finish with Unit 3B, and we're going to talk about culture and traditions today. Before we begin the new content, let's review last week's grammar point. Last week we learned the past continuous or past progressive tense. This is a verb tense that's used to talk about verbs that were in progress in the past. And we have 3 different usages. Number 1, we use it to describe an action in progress at a specific time in the past. For example, I was living in Busan in 2003. Use number 2 is to describe 2 actions in progress at the same time. Remember, we had a picture with 2 long bars that were happening at the same time. I was studying while they were talking. When we describe 2 actions in progress at the same time, we should use the word while. While we were talking, or while we were walking, I was eating. The third use is to describe an action that happened while another action was in progress. So remember, we had one long action, the past continuous, and then it was interrupted by a simple past tense verb. I was taking a shower when you called. When I arrived, they were eating food. So now we have a long action in the past and a short completed action in the past. When we use the third use, we should use the word when. Okay, so now that we've had a quick review of this grammar point, let's take a look at this picture. This is a party last night. In your notebook, I'd like you to practice making 3 to 5 past continuous sentences about this party. What were people doing? Were people doing things together at the same time? Was something interrupted? And remember, we should always use the past tense be verb and a verb with ing. I was walking. She was singing. Take some time to write your answers, and when you come back, we'll begin our new content this week. Now let's look at our 10 vocabulary words this week. Please listen and repeat. Select, describe, rhythm, instruments, lyrics, explain, compare, contrast or contrast, define, summarize. Now let's look at some images and connect them to the vocabulary words. You'll see an image, the vocabulary, and a sample sentence. Select. This is a verb. The soccer coach selected his best players for the championship match. Describe. Many people described Mr. Rogers as kind, loving, and calm. Rhythm. A drummer needs to have a good sense of rhythm to play well. I really love how they described the rhythm in this table. We can almost hear it when we read it. Ticka 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 ticka. Instruments. There are 5 main types of instruments: percussion, woodwind, string, brass, and keyboard. Lyrics. The rhythm is catchy, but the lyrics are not very creative. Explain. My professor explained the problem to me. Compare. In this essay, I will compare Korean cultural traditions with Chinese traditions. Contrast. Listen to the pronunciation. Contrast. When we are using it as a verb, we put the accent on the second syllable. Contrast. Compare. However, we can use this word as a noun. When we use it as a noun, we put the accent on the first syllable. Contrast. 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 Here we are going to use it as a verb. Contrast. There are many differences. I will contrast Korean and Chinese eating customs. Define. We use a dictionary to define the meaning of a word. Summarize. A good book review will summarize the basic story before analyzing it. Okay, hopefully those images gave you a good idea of the meaning of those words. Now we have a few more examples of these words in context. Take a moment to read this in your in your textbook. After you have read all of the vocabulary, go ahead and match it to its definition. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. 1. Select E, to choose. 2. Describe J, to tell what something is like. 3. Rhythm G, a series of sounds. Particularly, they are in a certain pattern. Number 4. Instruments I, objects used to produce music. 5. Lyrics, the words of a song. 6. Explain B, to use facts or examples to prove your idea. 7. Compare, to discover the similarities or differences between two things. So, putting two things side by side and looking at both of them. Contrast. However, to contrast is to show the difference, focusing on the difference. 9. Define, to tell the meaning of a word. And finally, 10. Summarize, to tell the most important points in a short way. Okay, maybe you've already heard these words before, in which case we should be able to use them in sentences really well, right? Now let's take a look at this fill in the blank. We have some sentences, 10 sentences and 10 vocabulary words. Please go ahead and complete this exercise. When you come back, we'll check your answer. Let's check your answer. Number 1. I have to select which classes I'm going to take next semester. Number 2. Can you describe your favorite music for me? What does it sound like? 3. Taro didn't understand the assignment, so she asked her professor to explain it again. Number 4. In the first part of my presentation, I'm going to compare two kinds of music, reggae and calypso. I'm going to talk about how they are similar. Number 5. In the second part of my presentation, I'm going to contrast these two kinds of music and talk about how they are different. Number 6. If you don't understand a new word, you can use your dictionary to help you, or ask your teacher to define it for you. Number 7. When you summarize a book or a movie, You retell the most important information in a few sentences. Number 8. I don't play a musical instrument, but my brother plays the piano very well. Number 9. Samba music has a fast, happy rhythm. And 10. The lyrics to Portuguese fado songs are typically sad, but beautiful. Great. Now we've had some practice with our vocabulary words. Let's have a little fun now. So we know lyrics are the words to a song. Can you recognize these famous lyrics? Read the lyrics and try to match them to the musical artist. Try not to listen to the song or search it online. Just read the words. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. Number 1. Maybe this is a very familiar song to you. There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching a fever pitch, and it's bringing me out the dark. This is Adele. Rolling in the Deep. Next. Easy come, easy go. That's just how you live. This is Bruno Mars. Grenade. Next. I've paid my dues. Time after time. I've done my sentence but committed no crime. Freddie Mercury from Queen. Which means, of course, the last song is Hall & Oates, Man-Eater. This is a very famous song from the 80s. Okay, so maybe you've listened to these songs before, or maybe you've even sung them in for karaoke or norebang before. These are all great songs to sing. Now let's talk about global music. What different styles of music do you know from around the world? And what style of music is your favorite? If you go on YouTube or Spotify or whatever online musical app you like to listen to, there are so many different sections of music. And they're usually separated either by musical genre or country. And each country's traditional music can be so different and so interesting. So before we move on to the next slide, I just want you to take a moment and try to count how many musical styles you know. If you have a notebook, you can make a quick list, like salsa, rap, hip hop, Broadway. Okay, so take a moment, think about the different musical styles that you know. Now let's get ready for the listening part of today's lecture. Before we listen to the main presentation, we're going to listen to the presentation instructions. Please listen carefully to the teacher's instructions and then fill in the blanks. When you are finished, we'll check your answers.
B. Listening for main ideas. Page 57.
Good morning. I'm Alex, as you know. I'm going to talk to you today about music from the Roma culture. The music I selected is by a group called Shukar Collective. They're from Romania. First, I just wanted to define the word shukar, which means fine, or really good in Romani. I think they're really good, so I think it's a good name for them. Shukar Collective is a group of musicians and DJs from Eastern Europe, and they play music from the Roma culture. About their culture, traditionally, the Roma didn't have a home, so they often moved from place to place. Now they mostly stay in one place, and many of them speak two languages, their own Roma language and the language of the country where they live. One thing the Roma people are very famous for is music. Traditional Roma music usually has a very fast rhythm, and the lyrics show very strong feelings. The traditional Roma instruments are drums and an instrument called the cymbalum that sounds sort of like a piano. They also use some new electronic instruments, so their music is a mixture of traditional and modern sounds. I really like their music, as you can probably tell. Shukar Collective is made up of 3 traditional singers and 4 electronic musicians. They call their music electro gypsy dance, and it's very popular in dance clubs all over Europe. I actually did not bring a sample to play today, but I can bring one in tomorrow, or you can probably go online and find some of their music. Okay, to summarize, Shukar Collective is a group from Eastern Europe. They play music from the Roma culture, which combines traditional and new electronic sounds. It is very popular in Europe. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening to my presentation. So, does anyone have any questions?
Number 1. The students must select a kind of music to present. Then, they should talk about the culture the music comes from. Next, describe the music and explain which aspects are traditional and which aspects are new or modern. Next, compare and contrast it with another kind of music we have studied. Next, play a sample of the music for the class. And finally, summarize the main ideas and answer any questions from your classmates. Okay, now that we know exactly what the teacher expects from his students, we're going to listen to the presentation again. And this time, I want you to circle the parts that the student did in his assignment and which parts he didn't include. Okay? Do you think that this student did a good job following instructions? When you come back, we'll check your answers.
B. Listening for main ideas. Page 57.
Good morning. I'm Alex, as you know. I'm going to talk to you today about music from the Roma culture. The music I selected is by a group called Shukar Collective. They're from Romania. First, I just wanted to define the word shukar, which means fine, or really good in Romani. I think they're really good, so I think it's a good name for them. Shukar Collective is a group of musicians and DJs from Eastern Europe, and they play music from the Roma culture. About their culture, traditionally, the Roma didn't have a home, so they often moved from place to place. Now they mostly stay in one place, and many of them speak 2 languages, their own Roma language and the language of the country where they live. One thing the Roma people are very famous for is music. Traditional Roma music usually has a very fast rhythm, and the lyrics show very strong feelings. The traditional Roma instruments are drums and an instrument called the cymbalum that sounds sort of like a piano. They also use some new electronic instruments, so their music is a mixture of traditional and modern sounds. I really like their music, as you can probably tell. Shukar Collective is made up of 3 traditional singers and 4 electronic musicians. They call their music electro gypsy dance, and it's very popular in dance clubs all over Europe. I actually did not bring a sample to play today, but I can bring one in tomorrow, or you can probably go online and find some of their music. Okay, to summarize, Shukar Collective is a group from Eastern Europe. They play music from the Roma culture, which combines traditional and new electronic sounds. It is very popular in Europe. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening to my presentation. So, does anyone have any questions?
Now we've heard his presentation again. Which parts did he include in his presentation? Well, number one, he did select a kind of music to present, and he talked about the culture that it came from. He also described the music and explained which parts were traditional and which parts were modern. Finally, he summarized the main ideas. However, he didn't do a good job of the comparing and contrasting. So, now that we have listened to the main ideas of today's listening file, we're going to look at the details. In your textbook, you will see a fill in the blank. Let's listen again and complete the sentences. When you come back, we'll check your answers.
B. Listening for main ideas. Page 57.
Good morning. I'm Alex, as you know. I'm going to talk to you today about music from the Roma culture. The music I selected is by a group called Shukar Collective. They're from Romania. First, I just wanted to define the word shukar, which means fine, or really good in Romani. I think they're really good, so I think it's a good name for them. Shukar Collective is a group of musicians and DJs from Eastern Europe, and they play music from the Roma culture. About their culture, traditionally, the Roma didn't have a home, so they often moved from place to place. Now they mostly stay in one place, and many of them speak two languages, their own Roma language and the language of the country where they live. One thing the Roma people are very famous for is music. Traditional Roma music usually has a very fast rhythm, and the lyrics show very strong feelings. The traditional Roma instruments are drums and an instrument called the cymbalum that sounds sort of like a piano. They also use some new electronic instruments, so their music is a mixture of traditional and modern sounds. I really like their music, as you can probably tell. Shukar Collective is made up of 3 traditional singers and 4 electronic musicians. They call their music electro gypsy dance, and it's very popular in dance clubs all over Europe. I actually did not bring a sample to play today, but I can bring one in tomorrow, or you can probably go online and find some of their music. Okay, to summarize, Shukar Collective is a group from Eastern Europe. They play music from the Roma culture, which combines traditional and new electronic sounds. It is very popular in Europe. Well, that's it. Thanks for listening to my presentation. So, does anyone have any questions?
Let's check your answers. Shakar Collective is a group of musicians and DJs from Eastern Europe. One thing the Roma people are very famous for is music. Traditional Roma music usually has a very fast rhythm. The lyrics show very strong feelings. Shakar Collective is made up of 3 traditional singers and 4 electronic musicians. They call their music electro gypsy dance, and it's very popular in dance clubs all over Europe. Great! Hopefully you got all of those answers right. Can you remember what is one thing that this student didn't include in his assignment? He forgot to show a sample of the music. I think if we're going to learn about cultural music, then we have to listen to it. Let me show you a clip. First, I'm going to show you traditional music, the traditional music of the Roma people. And then I'm going to show you a clip from a Shakar Collective music video. Try to see if you can find the similarities, or contrast the 2 songs and tell me what the differences are. let's take a look at the traditional Roma people's music. So let's go here and let's have a look. Okay, so did you notice their instruments? The rhythm is very fast, just like they said in their presentation. Now that we have a taste of traditional Roma music, let's take a look at the Shakur Collective song. Okay, here we are. Tell me what you think of this song. Okay, so maybe it's not what we're used to, but it is really interesting to see a glimpse into their regular day-to-day life. Okay, so maybe this music sounded a little strange, but it's doing something really interesting. It's telling the story of this culture, the Romani people or the Roma people, and introducing it to a modern style of music and creating something totally original. Do you know a band like this that combines traditional music from your culture and modern music? In Canada, there is a band called A Tribe Called Red. It's very similar in concept to Shakar Collective, but instead of traditional Roma music, they use traditional Native American music, like Mohawk chanting and electronica. It's a very unique sound, and I think it's really, really interesting. Not only does it sound really interesting, but I think it serves a really important purpose in Canada's culture. And it's something really close to my heart because I live very close to a First Nations community. This is my hometown of Montreal. I live where that red star is, which is called the West Island. If you look at the bottom, there's a little area that's marked off. This is a Ganawage Reserve. It's a reserve for First Nations people to live in. As you can see, it's really not that far away. It's probably the same as maybe from Mushildong to Mumak. It's really, really close. And the people who live there live a totally different life from Canadians in the rest of Canada. Although I love Canada very much, and we have a great reputation for being very friendly and kind people, we can't forget about the terrible history and all of the crimes that were committed to the First Nations people. So, let's take a look at First Nations people in Canada. Many people think of North American Indians as being one type of culture, But actually, there are many different nations of Indigenous people in Canada and throughout America. And you'll notice that a lot of names in Canada and America are actually words that come from Indigenous languages. For example, the word or the city Ottawa is named from an Indigenous language. And if you look here, we can see just how diverse their different cultures can be. We have some Iroquois warriors, we have Inuit people, Haida First Nations from Vancouver, and you can see that their costumes and their music and general culture is completely different from each nation. In Canada, we don't really call them Indians. This is considered a disrespectful word. Instead, we call them Aboriginal, Indigenous, or First Nations people as a sign of respect to their position in Canada before it was colonized. So, what's the problem? It seems like Canada recognizes its First Nations people and we can celebrate them, but why is it so important to talk about them in a modern context? Well, first of all, many people think of First Nations people almost as a cartoon of what they were in the past. Everyone thinks about the feathers and the costumes and the drums. But the reality is that First Nations people live in Canada everywhere, and they live a modern life too. Also, I mean, although you can go to Montreal and see a powwow, which is in this photo here, a powwow is a Mohawk celebration where everyone comes, they do very traditional dances, they play traditional music, and you can watch their very traditional ceremonies. However, there is a very dark history of First Nations people in Canada. When Europeans came to Canada, the First Nations people were chased away from their homes and their land was stolen. They were pushed all the way across the country and they were pushed further and further away. Now, First Nations people live in areas called reserves, which is basically a special area that is just for them. But what happens is that these reserves don't get the same services or care that other cities do. Toronto and Montreal are big urban cities with lots of services, big hospitals, education, and we can get access to clean water and food. But for First Nations people who live on a reserve, like this reserve that's just maybe 30 minutes away from where I come from in Kahnawake, they live in really poor conditions. Also, not that long ago, less than 50 years ago, children were taken away and put into Christian or Catholic schools. They were stolen from their family and separated, and they tried to convert them to a European life. In these schools, their language was forbidden, and now the First Nations languages are starting to disappear because of this education that destroyed their language. And even now, they are still victims today. They are victims of poor care from the government, and also they are often targeted as victims for crime. For example, the Highway of Tears became very famous in Canada. This was a long part of the highway in BC, where Vancouver is. There was a serial killer who was killing women, specifically First Nations women. Why? Because people who are First Nations are often forgotten about in Canada. They have a difficult life, and when they disappear, no one really notices, which means that they are easy victims for criminals. Often, crimes against Indigenous people in Canada go unsolved. No one ever investigates the case. And during the Highway of Tears, it took 18 victims before the Canadian police really started to investigate the crimes. First Nations people are also often forgotten or ignored. So, Canada was proposing to open pipelines, which are these tunnels or pipes to carry oil through Canada into America. But to build these pipes, they had to destroy a lot of indigenous land. And the indigenous people who lived there didn't want them to do that. But their voices were often ignored. So the crimes that happen against First Nations people continue today in Canada. That's why this electronic music group, A Tribe Called Red, is not just an interesting and fun music to listen to. It's a really important political message, and it's a way to bring First Nations people into the minds of Canadians and people around the world, not just as a stereotype from history, wearing a big feathered headdress and beating a drum, but as real people who live today and who suffer greatly in our country, and they live right next door to us. So, to show you a little bit of this part of Canadian culture, I'd like to show you a clip from A Tribe Called Red. Let's take a look at their music video, and you can listen to their music too. I think it's pretty catchy. So, this song is called Stadium Powwow. And if you remember, as I explained, a powwow is a gathering of many um, in, well, where I come from, Mohawk Indians or Mohawk First Nations people, where they come and they have a ceremonial dance. And here they have a musical guest named Black Bear, who is also a First Nations person. So let's take a look at this song and listen to their music. Okay, so you saw how they contrasted the images of traditional Native American dance and modern urban life. And by making this contrast, they really set a strong political message in this song. Okay, I really encourage you to listen to their other music. I think it's really good music, but also really important in Canada's cultural life. Okay. Where is the thing? Don't tell me that wasn't recording the whole friggin' time. Maybe you know a musical band like this from your country. Now let's look at today's grammar. Today we're going to look at adjectives. And adjectives are words that we use to describe something. So remember our vocabulary word, describe, to tell about the way something is. But there are two main kinds of adjectives that we're going to look at today. The first is adjectives that end in ed. These are used to describe how a person feels. For example, I was confused reading the map. I'm worried about my low score. There's another kind of adjective that ends in ing. This adjective is used to describe the thing that causes the feeling. The map was very confusing. My low score was very worrying. This is a very common mistake that people make when they are learning English. So today we're going to practice the two different adjectives, our feelings and the thing that causes the feeling. One way that's easy to remember is to think ing is causing. Ing is the thing causing the feeling. Okay, so let's look at an example. Oh, some special things, first of all. Some feeling or emotion verbs don't have an ing form. I was delighted to meet her. We cannot say she was a delighting person. Instead, we say she was a delightful person. I was scared during the movie. We cannot say the movie was scaring. Instead, we say the movie was scary. We were impressed by you. You were very impressing. We say you were very impressive. I am so stressed at my job. My job is so stressing. That's wrong. My job is so stressful. I was offended by the joke. The joke was offending. No, the joke was offensive. These verbs are just exceptions that you will need to memorize. Luckily, they're pretty commonly used, so you probably use them naturally without even thinking about it. Okay, so now that we've talked about the exceptions, let's practice a little bit. Here we have a girl and a snake. How does she feel? Why don't you take a second and make a sentence out loud? Good. Okay, maybe you said she is scared. We can also say she is frightened. It has the same meaning. Now let's use this word, frightened. How can we change it to talk about the snake? The snake is the thing that is causing her to feel. So we can say the snake is good. The snake is frightening or frightening. She is frightened. The snake is frightening. Let's look at another example. Woohoo! He is good. And how about the roller coaster? The roller coaster is, remember, ing is the thing that is causing the feeling. Good. He is excited. The roller coaster is exciting. Very good. How about this? Ooh, how does she feel? Valerie is good. Valerie is confused. How about the math problem? Good. The math problem is confusing. Okay, now that we've practiced a little bit, let's go into your textbook. You will see a sentence that has two different adjectives. You need to circle the correct one for that sentence. When you come back, we'll check your answers. Let's check your answers. Number one, the answer is already given. I was a little bored in class today. Number two, I was surprised to learn that steel drums are made from oil barrels. Here we're using ed because we're describing the person's feelings. I'm very worried about tomorrow's assignment on traditional music. Doing the research for oral presentation tomorrow was tiring. Good. The research was making them feel tired. I gave my presentation today. Now I feel relaxed. Are you really interested in traditional music? Okay, very good. So always remember, ED is for your feelings. I'm scared. I'm bored. I often have students who tell me, "Oh, teacher, I'm boring." That means something totally different. Okay, so remember, ing makes you feel. Ed makes or describes how you feel. Okay, now let's talk about this week's participation work. Because we don't often get a chance to speak together, I thought that this week it would be fun to have a verbal participation activity. So what we're going to do is go to WISEC and download this one-page document. You're going to read the questions. There are 10 questions that are about today's unit topic. Answer these questions out loud and record an audio file. And you can always use your phone voice recorder to make this audio file. Use 3 or more vocabulary words and this week's grammar, adjectives, ed, and ing, when you answer these questions. The audio file should be max 5 minutes, and then upload the audio file to WISEC before next class. This way you have a chance to practice speaking, and I get to listen to your speaking skill as well. One more thing about this assignment. You don't need to write a script, so please do not send a Word document to me. Only upload the audio file, which can be an MP3 or a WMA file. Also, I think it is really important to practice answering without writing your answer first. I know it's really tempting to prepare your answer and check that it's perfect, or maybe you want to use a dictionary or a translator to construct the answer first. But use this opportunity to practice speaking naturally without preparation. Just read the questions and answer in the moment. That way you can practice thinking quickly and creating answers in the moment. Okay, this is not a graded assignment, so don't worry if you think that your English speaking level is really low, or if you make too many grammar mistakes or something like that. This is a practice time, so I'm not going to give you a test score. Just practice speaking and then upload your file so I can hear where you are in the semester right now. I would really love to hear your voices. And also, please don't forget to complete the attendance quiz. I have been checking your attendance and keeping track. And as you know, this semester, the number of maximum absences has been lowered because of the shortened semester. So it's really important that you keep completing your attendance quizzes every week. It's very quickly to accumulate absences, and it's very easy to fail this course just because of that. So please remember to finish the attendance quiz. Okay, all right. So as usual, from now on, we have 1 week to complete all of our work and attendance quizzes. And of course, we can repeat the quiz many times to get a good score. If you get lower than the 60 on the attendance quiz, you will not get an attendance point. Okay, well, that's a wrap for this week's lesson. Thank you so much for listening and have a great week. Goodbye.